Hey everybody, this is Gabe Yanis, and if I hated you, you would know. Hey, welcome to the second episode. If I hated you, you would know. I am your host, I guess, Gabe Yanis. Trying to get the video thing figured out. Obviously, last time it didn't work, but hopefully this time it does. If you're just listening to this audio, no big deal, right? But you can also follow me on YouTube. That is what it is. If you look up "If I Hated You," If I Hated You, You Would Know. You'll find it on YouTube. And yeah, I guess be sure to like and subscribe and all those things. Not really too concerned about that. This is probably never going to make money, and it's mostly just about me talking about the things that I think are important. So, yeah, let's kick it off today. So, I really want to start off with like this idea that came across because I was watching a documentary with my wife. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my cell phone sound just in case I get text messages. Just realized that. But anyway, so I started watching this documentary with my wife, actually a little bit kind of towards the end of it, called Breakdown 75. And it's really about New Hollywood and the film industry in 1975, and kind of like this year where like really dramatic social films came out, right? And I'm not going to focus too much on that. I might talk a little bit about that some other time, like New Hollywood and kind of this movement towards like a more aspirational filmmaking, I guess, for lack of a better term. But the thing that I really wanted to touch base on is like this idea of like false nostalgia, right? So there is a movement, right, in all of media and all of culture and all of politics and all these different things that are constantly pointing us backwards, right? And I do think that's very, very important. I think it's important that we analyze history, that we look at the past, and that we try to learn from the mistakes of the past. But I think, as and I can't speak as like a human race as a whole, but like as Americans very specifically, we have a tendency to like lionize the past in a way that I think is really dangerous. So I like to think of it as kind of like the subtle fascism of nostalgia, right? That if we tell ourselves that the story of our past is true with no exceptions, with no qualifiers, and with no like criticism, then we are succeeding, right? Like we are this successful, strong nation. Look at how glorious our past is, right? And like when we think about a glorious past, like some of the things that come to mind are like, you know, um, China looking at their past and like conferring all of the time and power and innovation of all of the kingdoms in their region into like the consolidation of China today is, the ultimate extension of all of the past in its perfection, right? Or we look back and I watched this really incredible interview with Ken Burns talking about his new American Revolution documentary. And while a lot of what he's talking about I really connected with, a lot of it was very like, look how incredible, look how great, look how amazing. And I started watching it last night, and there's a lot more nuance to it than I think he implied. And part of that is, he's on a Meet the Press interview, and they're talking about a lot of other stuff besides just his documentary. So there is that. But when we take these moments and we're thinking to ourselves, look how great the past was. Oh man, I wish I could go back. Oh man, I wish, I lived. I mean, we've all had that thought, right? Like watched movies that take place in like the 1890s to like 1920s and thought to myself, man, would I have fit in better there? Like a firebrand preaching in front of a, union shop or something like that. Like, those kind of things pop into your mind. But then when you like actually go back and like analyze history, you realize that like probably I would not have been like anything spectacular. Probably I would have had my head split open by a union buster just for being a loudmouth, because I have that problem, right? So if we're constantly like looking back at the past and kind of idealizing it, we're setting ourselves up to create this narrative of like of a national like perfection, right? So what really made it come to mind while watching Breakdown 75 is them talking about Happy Days, right? So the TV show Happy Days started coming out in like the 60s and 70s. I would have to double check. And again, the caveat that I should put at the beginning of every episode is this is me talking like off the top of my head. Um, I was talking to some friends online last night and really express it as this is me thinking out loud, right? So there will be factually inaccurate statements. And when I make those, I would appreciate anybody going into the comments and saying, this is factually incorrect. Here's why, and I would love, I'm, I'll probably interact with pretty much anybody that comments, but if you just come in here and say XYZ was wrong, unless you send me something to tell me different, I'm not going to put a lot of time and effort into doing your research for you, right? So, like, if you want to express to me that something I said was incorrect, then please show me why it was incorrect, because you're the one telling me that I'm wrong, and I would appreciate it because, hopefully in the future, this is the kind of thing where I wouldn't have time to respond to every, criticism. So that's neither here nor there. I think I'm pretty sure Happy Days started in the late 60s. Let me double check. When did Happy Days start airing? 74. So not even the 60s, mid 70s. So if we look at that, right? So here's this story about like these teenagers and like, yeah, they have problems, but for the most part, their life is like very idealized. Like the issues that they have are nothing compared to the issues that are swirling around in like this situation. So like we're talking the mid 70s. There's disco, there's cocaine going on, like crack is starting to exist. People are doing the wild party thing like all over the place, right? So you have this culture that feels like it's on the brink of like some kind of like existential crisis or collapse. People aren't like religious the same way they used to be. They aren't, going to church the same way they used to. They don't do this the same way they used to. So let's make a TV show that shows us, oh, look how much better it was in the past. Shouldn't we act more like this? And the Happy Days is very much that. If you look at it, it's so goofy and silly, and yeah, it's very funny, and yeah, it's very entertaining, but it's absolutely nothing like the reality of the 50s, right? Like, sure, there is that veneer of that, but in the behind closed doors, like a husband could beat his wife and get away with it in a lot of situations. Like a homosexual ran the risk of like assault and murder if they were found out, right? Being a minority in the 50s was fucking terrible, hands down. Like, sure, you probably could have lived a quiet, normal life in some parts of the country, but you definitely were getting a hard stare in a grocery store every once in a while at the minimum, because I still get that today, right? And I'm not even that dark. Like, I just look like a weirdo, I guess, because of tattoos and slightly different skin color, and today my hair looks like I love berries and cream. So I I just I see the same thing now happening in our current like media vernacular, right? So we have this intense political and social situation, especially in the United States that we're in, where we're like at each other's throats when it comes to a million different things, right? Like, there's a group that believes the climate is in peril. There's a group that could give a fuck less. Like, I mean, some of some of the interviews I've seen, the people know that climate change is real, but who gives a shit because I'm going to be dead before it's an issue, right? Which is extremely short-sighted, but also extremely American, right? Like we live our lives in like 6-month cycles. Like, the political cycle is minimum 2 years, but there's a special election all the time, right? Like our media is in like 3-month cycles. A full season doesn't even necessarily come out in 6 months. There's so many different things that are like in these quick cycles. We don't think about long-term plans a lot of the time. So with that, we feel like as a nation, like we're spiraling out of control. Like all of these things are going super chaotic and everything is horrible. Wouldn't it be better if there was a simpler time? And I fall victim to this constantly, right? Like I was talking to my kid yesterday that one of the things that I think really has like fucked up America is the internet, right? Because before I had the internet, if I wanted to learn something, I had to read a book, right? And reading a book, the exercise of reading a book does certain things to our brain. It rewires our brain chemistry. Like it also makes us more curious. It makes us want to learn more. Like the more you learn, the more you want to learn because you realize that there's so many gaps in your knowledge, right? There's this idea that I didn't have a lot of TV choices, right? Like I had 4 channels, and from 9 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, there was absolutely fucking nothing of interest on. It was like soap operas and reruns of terrible old TV shows, some of which I really liked when I was a kid. And now looking back at it, they're very boring, but some of them are very funny still. So what did I do instead? I went swimming like almost every day because my grandparents had a pool in their condo association, or I would get on my BMX and like tear around the neighborhood all the time, right? Those great memories are great memories, right? And they're just a part of my past, right? But I tend to think of them in like really idealized ways, and our media likes to present them in real idealized ways, right? So thing that really got me thinking about it was I was in a classroom a couple days ago teaching a lesson on manifest destiny. And as I was teaching the lesson on manifest destiny, we talk about Morse code as like one of the technological innovations that was like a positive of manifest destiny. So for the record, like this lesson goes through the pros and cons and talks very like explicitly about the massive negatives that had to do with our expansion across the country. But in this particular instance, I am just speaking about Morse code. I was like, has anybody ever heard of it? And one of these kids, and mind you, these are 4th graders, raises his hand and says, in the first season of Stranger Things, they talk with their mom using Morse code. And I had this moment where I realized, oh, this 4th grader is like seeing this media that is representative of this idealized 80s. They have never experienced the 80s. They will never experience the 80s unless we figure out time travel, right? But this kid has an idea of what that world is like in a sense that someone my age will never be able to fully comprehend, because it's how I observed the 50s watching Happy Days. I had formed this idealized opinion of what the 50s were like, of what that time period was like. And wouldn't it be great if we could go back to that, right? I would be cool like the Fonz, or maybe I would be a minority that owns his own business. But was that really what the 50s were like? In some cases, yeah, but in all cases, probably not, right? So was it okay to be openly gay as a teenager in the 80s? Like you kind of see in the Friends group in Stranger Things? Fuck no. Was it normal for there to be a black kid in a group of white friends in the 80s? Not really. It happened. It was real, but it wasn't always normal. And those tensions about culture things like homosexuality, racism, we couldn't even look. We are very divided in this country right now over some really intense and incredible things. In the 80s, I couldn't get along with people that listened to rap because my subculture of metal and punk hated rap, right? So stupid. It's so stupid. But we were doing that to ourselves constantly. We were segmenting and separating and pushing away and making out groups out of anybody that we could and consolidating our friends groups into cliques and gangs and crews, right? Like how many people from my generation have their area code tattooed onto them for some reason or another, whether it be part of their hardcore crew, whether it be part of their little straight edge crew, whether it be part of a street gang, from either side, right? Here it was Sereno and Norteño. They're all sporting 970s, right? So like we were more separated. We were intentionally separating ourselves. We were in a worse cultural position, right? Now we have access to more information. And so we're able to more readily access the atrocities that are being committed around the world by states, right? State violence is the purest and most brutal form of violence because largely it's not being controlled by the population. But it's better, right? It's not great. This is not ideal. And the United States in particular is a like rolling shit show because this is the last gasp of a generation that literally has only ever given a shit about itself, right? So as we're going through this last gasp of the boomer generation, as Generation X is trying desperately to say, guys, we were telling you, we just didn't really know how because we didn't maybe necessarily adopt the internet enough. Or as a lot of us from my generation are fighting through the bullshit that we were taught, that we were told, that you were exceptional, that Christianity was the ideal, that everything you do is right. You don't need to learn anything else because I already taught you. I belong to a generation that's constantly fighting through all of that, right? So don't fall for it. Don't fall for this, control through nostalgia. We don't need to hearken back to the 80s or the 50s or the 20s or the 1880s to say to ourselves, we need to go back to that because that was better. It wasn't. We are constantly working towards refining and improving ourselves as a society, as humanity, right? It doesn't always look like it. It's not pretty. It's almost universally violent. But the reality of the situation is, without cooperation, we will fail. And if we only want to go backwards, we're never going to move forwards, right? So don't fall for the trap. Yeah, enjoy Stranger Things. Yeah, have great memories about the 80s. But don't pretend like, and I refuse to pretend like everything was great because it wasn't, right? It wasn't. Just look at Generation X and how shut off we are from the fucking world because a lot of us were neglected. A lot of us were sexually and physically abused. There was a ton of police and government overreach into our lives. The schools were starting to feel the brunt of that. Let's not fund education. We were all told to go to college and ended up with tons of debt or unable to do it because we didn't know what attention deficit disorder was. We didn't know what autism was, at least not in a real way, like we do now. The past was not better. All right. The past is the past. Let's grow and move on from it. All right. Well, next I'm going to talk about the movie Sacred Spirit. Be back in a second. All right. Hey, welcome back, everybody. I put these breaks in mostly so that my camera doesn't overheat and start and stop. Right. So the next segment, there will be a quick on-camera intro, but for the most part, it'll just be like a title screen. Because when I was first recording this interview, my camera was not set up in such a way that it would work. There will be some weird edits where you hear me say, I got to go fix, et cetera, because the camera fell down a couple times and the mic fell down. And I don't know. It was my first shot at this and I was doing terrible. But that's besides the point. So coming up next, that's going to be weird on my mic, I think. Anyway, coming up next is an interview with David Herrera. It's largely about sobriety and that kind of stuff. Like it's really good talk. Really enjoyed it. So anyway, next up, we're going to talk about this film, The Sacred Spirit. This is a film by Chema, García, Ibarra. This is one of those moments where I reveal to you guys that I am Latino, but not Hispanic. I am of South American descent, but nobody bothered to teach me Spanish. So sometimes I will do great with Spanish names and words, and sometimes I will stick my foot in my mouth and it will sound like crap. So this will probably end up being kind of a long episode because I'm already at like 20 minutes, and the interview is like, probably once I edit it and stuff, really close to an hour. But I will separate it out and also post it like individually. Totally beside the point. So, Sacred Spirit. This is a really interesting movie. For starters, Ibarra is he's from a small city in Spain. Elgin, I want to say it's called. Let me double check, see if it's on here really quick. All right. Can't read that fast. I don't see it. But anyway, it's a small industrial city that its major industry is shoemaking, which I think is very interesting. And he has gone very intentionally out of his way to not cast actors in his films. This is his first feature-length film after making 6 short films, all of which feature actors that are just ordinary people from the city that he lives in. And he talks pretty extensively in some of the special features on this particular Blu-ray release, which if you become interested in this, I highly recommend getting it. And if you can find the special edition, the second disc has all of his short films on it as well. I just haven't dug into them yet, just because of time. So Sacred Spirit is a very interesting film because Ibarra likes to create what he calls domestic science fiction, which follows the path. It follows a couple paths, like if I'm honest. And he doesn't mention this in the interview, but I feel like I recognize something in it that maybe he just doesn't because he's Spanish as opposed to Latin American Spanish. But it follows kind of 2 ideas. Like, so the first idea is what are called domestic films, right? So there's like this kind of Spanish and Latin American idea of making films about people as they just go through like their day-to-day lives. Sometimes those use like actors, right? Where they're following an actor who's just experiencing like the life of a maid or something like that. In this case, like that, since he's not using actors and because he's putting them in physical spaces that they're familiar with because it's in the city that they live in, he's capturing that feel, right? That like domestic feel, that feel of like just people going about their day-to-day lives, right? And then he adds in a fantasy or a science fiction element, right? So in this film, it's about a cosmic being that needs a child host so that it can enter into it and usher in a great new cosmic age. And the whole film is surrounded with like all of this nuance and like allusion to like the metaphysical and the spiritual and the cosmic in a very like new age sense. I don't think that the movie specifically states when it's taking place, and there's things like flat screen TVs in the film and stuff like that, but it still feels like it's taking place in the not too distant past, like maybe the early 2000s or like late 90s, even though some of the technology would be anachronistic to that time. Like it kind of sits in a amorphous past, right? The movie deals with a young man who, not even young, like probably a middle-aged guy who runs a bar that, is covered in, ancient Egyptian symbolism, like in a kind of faux mystic way. And then his sister, who has twin kids, one of whom is missing at the beginning of the film, and one of whom is very close to her uncle, right? And as you're following the story, you're realizing that the uncle is very fixated on this UFOlogy and like effectively a cult that like is trying to usher in like a new human era. And there's a lot to the plot that revolves around that in a way that I don't really want to reveal because of like a spoiler-ish thing, right? It's not even a spoiler. Like when you get to the end of the movie, there's a pretty drastic reversal. And if you've been not incredibly critically watching the movie, if you've just been kind of watching it as enjoyment, without like really digging into like every symbol and every word that they're saying in the moment, if you just kind of are letting the movie wash through you the first time, there's a chance you won't see the end coming, right? If you watch through the movie a second time, which I did, you definitely see where he's pointing, where the director is pointing at this shift in perspective, right? So it talks about a couple of things. It really talks about surveillance, right? Like it talks about being watched, what it's like, um, kind of that sense of uh, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean that it's not true, right? That like sometimes when people, it feels like someone's watching you, someone's watching you. Like I'm trying, it's just going to happen, guys. Sometimes it feels like somebody's watching me. All right, I had to do it. I could not let the obtrusive thought not happen, intrusive thought. Anyway, so it deals a lot with that, like with surveillance, what it means to like see and not see. There's a lot of shots where people move in and out of shot, or people are obscured, right? So that you get this sense of like lurking and watching, right? In a really incredible way. The other thing it really deals with is like class distinction, right? Like, what does it mean to be in a lower class and have people in an upper class try to express to you the importance of what they believe and why you should believe it and why you should be in service to them because of their beliefs, right? And this sense of like, what does it really look like to be exploited, right? That it is exploitation only financial, right? So there's kind of a subplot where a lot of the factory shoe workers actually work in their homes as opposed to like on a factory floor. And as a consequence, they get paid less, right? Which makes no sense because you are actually providing the space and the equipment and the repairs and probably in some cases the materials, right? To get paid less. Like that's, it's like the opposite of seizing the means of production, where you like are fully in control and they pay you less is like so crazy. But but so there's this subplot to that. But like what does exploitation look like when it's spiritual, right? Like what does it look like to pay for a guru to tell you what's great in life, right? What does it look like to have to give money to somebody who's also telling you to go buy something to accomplish a task, right? So like it's talking about this like exploitation of class in more than one arena, right? More than just the financial arena, more than just the political arena, but also in this like spiritual arena, right? And it's just a really powerful message in a lot of ways because it's easy for the wealthy to gain access to education and then to use that education to exploit people that don't have education, right? We see this a ton in the United States, right? There's not a single politician. I mean, there's probably a few, but there's not a single politician that didn't go to like a good university, get a decent degree, and work in some like industry ancillary to politics before they started into politics, right? There's just too many. I mean, just even like look, even Donald Trump, like he's not a smart man, but he went to the Wharton Business School and he learned not maybe necessarily how to run a business, but he learned how to exploit the people around him. Same with JD Vance. Look, JD Vance went to Yale and then wrote a book about how he's a hillbilly. And I don't doubt for a second that he had a hard upbringing and a hard life, but it's really, really difficult for me to look at how he lives now and how he talks about people now and think that he learned any lessons from his poverty and from his low class upbringing. All right, so weird little break where my camera overheated. But it's hard for me to see where he's learned lessons from his low class upbringing and isn't using his high class education to now exploit those people that he was raised by. Right? Like, that's just how it seems from the outside. So Sacred Spirit deals a lot with that in a very unique way that is both intimate, personal, down to earth, and fantastical, like all at once. So highly recommend watching it. This Arrow Video Special Edition is a super awesome version of it. It's got great interviews, great special features, definitely worth checking out. So I'm going to wrap this section up and then get to editing David's interview. I'll be back briefly with a short video introduction before we go into it. But yeah, see you. All right, so this is the last segment. This is my interview with David Herrera. Yeah, I'm not going to do anything at the end of this. I'm just going to kind of let the episode conclude. There won't be any kind of outro or anything. So yeah, enjoy this interview. I'm also going to release it separately so that if you're not super interested in listening to the half an hour before this, you can go back and listen to this just by itself. Yeah, without any further ado, this is David Herrera. And yeah, like and subscribe if you're enjoying everything so far. I'm not really an interesting guy. I'm just kind of interested in interesting things. And if I hated you, you would know. All right. So, I've had this idea for quite a while, right? So the idea is this. A big part of why people feel like alienated from each other is because they don't like have face-to-face conversations with each other anymore. So my idea was to talk to people and just talk to them about them, right? Because the other thing that I have a tendency to do is tell you what I think. You may or may not have noticed it. So the way I'm going to go about doing that is by just talking to anybody that is willing to be interviewed. Like, you don't have to be someone special. You don't have to be my friend. You don't have to even be someone I know. So one of the things that I've been saying pretty regularly on the channel is I'm not a very interesting person. I'm just interested in really interesting things. So, like, in general, my day-to-day life is going to school, going to work, not really doing a whole lot. But, like, I really am interested in other people. So my head is wet because I just took a shower. So the prompt that I'm going to give everybody that I interview is just, tell me like a few sentences about who you are and then go from there, right? So with that said, this is the first episode of In Person because these will all be in person. And this is David Herrera. David, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I love the question. Made me think a little bit. I always nowadays start with, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I start there because that is my identity. I'm proud of it. It's a big chunk of who I am now, and it influences what I do. But I consider myself a giver and a people pleaser. And those are both good things, and of course those are also can be really terrible things. I think when I say people pleaser, I think I am the guy who wants everyone just to have a good time. Whether it's been like for the holidays, making sure we have games to do and that we're all just having a good time. Even at work, it's always, how are we all enjoying this experience? But of course, then the flip side I've learned about myself is that's also, I've stayed in relationships way too long, trying to change who I am and adapt to please a person who just didn't want to be pleased. And so I've had to do a lot of work from that root thing of being a recovering alcoholic to try to figure out where I'm being that giver that wants people to just, where it's a healthy people pleasing versus going down into some of that toxicity that I've had to deal with my whole life.
So first off, congratulations on your sobriety.
Yeah.
I knew you before you were sober. There's plenty of stories to tell. Obviously not really what this is about, but like seeing the change in you has been really fundamental, right? Like we attempted this once and it went off the rails. I won't even bring up how it went off the rails to save you some embarrassment.
Thank you.
But when you when you approach your recovery, like, I guess because I know you, I have more knowledge on it, but to be more forward facing, how did you end up in recovery? Because, like, some people hit their rock bottom and choose, some people don't. Like, what pushed you to make those changes?
That's an interesting question. I mean, so for people that wouldn't know me, it's always a shocker, especially in the work I do now, working at a recovery center, when I tell them, yeah, I was a Baptist pastor. I was living this fundamental Christian life, doing this whole thing, and also actively destroying myself with alcohol. And so I remember, this plays into a big part of just to right away answer that question, something in me had to say, I need to do this for myself. So here I am, this Baptist pastor. I kind of get exposed. Things are spiraling a little bit, and I'm approached by my congregants, sort of the council, if you will, and they're concerned, and they're like, we're really concerned about your alcoholism. It seems like your wife is not doing okay with this, and so of course she had asked in the past, like my ex-wife had said, please stop drinking. What can we do? Can we get some treatment? But it never felt authentic from her. When she would ask, it was typically out of embarrassment for me. Like, you're embarrassing, or I wish you would just, clean up, whatever. And I just didn't care. And then even when the church had asked me, like, you should go to treatment, like, we'll pay for it, I had this moment where I realized they weren't really concerned about me. They knew they were going to lose this young pastor who had really changed a lot of things and brought a lot of people in, and we had this really successful ministry for that little town. And I realized they didn't really want me to recover because they liked or loved me. It was just like, we're going to lose this kid. And those are the conversations I would hear. Like, we're going to lose so much if we lose you. And part of why I was drinking already was because there was something broken. I felt insufficient. I was dealing with depression. And just knowing that my value to these people really was just what I could do for them. Again, going to that toxic side of people pleasing, I just rejected that. And so, as you know, leaving that church leads to moving to a new town where I don't have any friends, any support system, getting divorced, having to move out. All those things didn't make me say, I got to stop drinking. I just lost my ministry. I just lost my job. I lost my family. It just made me say, oh, well, now I'm just really going to drink. For some reason, my story it ends on this pivotal point. Like, I had 3 friends that just finally reached out and said, this has got to stop. And it wasn't that other people hadn't reached out. For some reason, it was these 3 folks, and one of them just decides, finally, I got to reach out. This is my last chance with this guy. So I always share this story just because something had to click. My friend Jen, one day, I told them they had had an intervention. I had told them I'd stop drinking, and I think that went for a day or 2, and I started drinking again. And the deal with those friends was, I'll stop drinking, and then if I don't stop drinking, I'll go to rehab. A month goes on, and she finally pulls me aside at my cubicle, and she's like, hey, how are you doing with your drinking? And I say, yeah, I'm doing fine. Like, I'm on Vivitrol now, and it's making me feel wacky, and I'm kind of even pushing my coffee mug away because I knew I had half vodka, half tea in it. And I'm like,
I'm doing great.
Yeah, like, cover that. And then we're in this workplace with cubicles, and she goes, hey, let's step outside to the parking lot. It's too loud in here. And so we go out to the parking lot, and she says, hey, what's going on for real? Like, you're so off. And I'm just like, I don't know. I'm going through a breakup with so-and-so. I'm just unhappy. It's just bullshit. And then she pulls me into her vehicle. She told me it's too cold outside. Let's get in my car. She starts up her car. I think my first thought was, the AC's on. And I'm like, weren't you just saying you were cold? And But when she starts the truck, she just said, David, I know you've been drinking. I know you're drunk right now. And I can't stop you, but I'm giving you 2 months before they find out. And you're going to lose your job. And your ex-wife's going to take your kids from you. And you're going to sink into this hole. And she says, I know what the answer to your problems is. You're just going to drink more. And she goes, just let me take you down to our corporate office. I will call our COO. I will call our director. Let us get you into rehab. Like, we can get you, we can save your job, all this stuff. And she goes, I want to see you get better. But she goes, I can't force you. The choice is yours. And then, like, right when she said that, I heard the door lock click. And I thought, oh shit, this bitch locked me in the truck. And then I looked at the lock, and what she had actually done is when she started the truck, the doors automatically locked. What she had done is she had unlocked it and gave me this choice. And I don't know why, I just always see that literal click. Something hit. And I didn't owe Jen anything. I didn't owe her an explanation for my life or how I had become this bad. She genuinely had compassion for me as a human being and was just watching me go through the same kind of path she had already gone through. And just like, for some reason, it was this genuine, authentic compassion. She wasn't this Christian. She has no faith that I have knowledge of or anything. She just did it as a human being. And just for whatever reason, that click was like, and I joke with her today, like I feel bad, but I remember I said, you bitch, like driving. And I think I called her a bitch for the next 10 minutes while she drove me to our main office. And I would cry, and then I'd get angry, I was drunk, so I would just go back and forth. But even then, to really answer that question, I guess, is there was something in me that woke up that I realized I didn't even really remember the last 4.5 years of my life. It had just kind of been a blur, and I'm like, how did I end up here at this place? And I think, treatment, you don't go to rehab and then get better. You go and hopefully get some tools. So I think I was just tired. I remember just saying, even in that truck to Jen, I just said, I'm tired. I'm so tired. I'm running from something, and I don't know where I'm running to, and I don't even know what I'm running from. It's like just exhaustion. So I think, unfortunately, in the work I do now with addicts, it's hard to tell the family member, like, we hope this is it. We're going to give them some tools, but something has to click. And really, for me, I do root it to, my ex-wife, Trudy, hates that. And maybe she questions what kind of relationship I had with these girls or whatever. But she's like, I can't, lots of people asked you, like, but for her, you just did it. And it wasn't like I didn't do it for her. It was this authenticity, this genuine, like, I care about another human enough to, I'd only known her for 1.5 years at that point. And had only really deeply known her for maybe 8 months. And here, these 3 people are reaching out and saying,
So, you're talking about this moment of, like, genuine compassion, genuine authenticity. So, like, authenticity is, like, a really obnoxious word to me. Because, like you, like, I was raised up in the church. Like, I spent a lot of my life in it. It's an integral part of, like, who I am. Like, it's not my belief system anymore, but it's still, like, a really important part of me, I think that's true for a lot of people that walk away from any religion that they were raised in. But one of the things that's really obnoxious to me about the church is what I like to think of as, like, performative authenticity, right? Like, this idea that if I'm vulnerable to you, then you'll be vulnerable to me, but the only reason I'm being vulnerable to you is to, like, extract something from you, right? So when you talk about authenticity, I don't feel like you're talking about it that way, right? Explain to me, like, how you try to reflect that towards people now because it was so powerful for you then.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think that was the thing with Jen. It was, yeah, I was in that culture and I felt it. It was the church body that I had asked me to go to treatment. I mean, and I was drinking heavily then, but it was like I could read right through it. It was, we are doing this for something we can eventually get out of it. And that's how it was with my ex-wife. It was kind of like she wanted this version of me that I was running from anyways. There was no perfect husband kind of thing. So I think now it's kind of this altruistic view. It's this genuinely wanting to serve other people because I just want to see you at your best. And that's the thing with it's very, I still have this core faith that I wrestle with and I fight and dismiss sometimes and then bring to the front sometimes, but and I feel comfortable with all of that, but it bugs me that I lost a lot of Christian friends at the bottom, right? Because they just were like, this guy can't get his shit together. But here's this, I wouldn't even say agnostic, but essentially this atheist person who just saw value and made a move. It's this, it's a concept, it's a song that really captures it. I have it on my wrist. It's an idol song, Freud on Freude, which is like it's a German kind of slang expression. Like, my joy is seeing you at your best. And I think that's just where I'm at with life now. It's like, what can I do to support you to just be at your best? Like, I don't care if you think like me or hold my same core values or whether you abuse drugs or don't, or whether you agree with anything. It's just, are you enjoying your ride on this planet right now? And I think that's just helped me to shape. The more genuine I am with that, and just in how I help other people and how I approach other people, it also helps with that people pleasing thing, because I'm also not giving energy out to people that don't want it. Like, that's the one thing I learned from my friend Jen. She was like, we didn't know how to approach you. And it's not like she's walking up to alcoholics and being like, hey, you need to get recovery. She's like gauging. I call her a sniper. Like, I really talk highly of her. I think in my brain, I'm like, she saved my life in that sense. But I call her a sniper because she kind of like chooses her, like, I could hit that. Like, that guy's ready, or that guy might be ready. And there's no gain. I see Christians, this is maybe what you're referring to, but I see a lot of Christians who are posting pictures at the homeless shelter, or, hey, standing over at the sandwich. We handed out these sandwiches to the homeless. And this is the exact thing, that they read about in the Bible. Jesus is saying, don't let your right hand know what your left hand's doing. Like, don't try and get credit or applause. Just do it because it's something you should be doing. But I think Christians are so terrible at this that they're constantly posting what they're doing for the needy or for whoever, to get that little reward. And, like with Jen, she just did it. She's never, nobody would know unless I'm out here saying her name. She's not on Facebook or any social media saying, look what I did. There's still David. That's a product of me being good. And that stuff.
You'll be sure to post pictures of her and stuff. No, just kidding.
Make sure you tag her. I'll give you her handle. But that's the thing. I'm like, how is this non-believer just being an authentic human being? It's not just because we're talking. I share this story often. I have Christian friends that are like, who are these people you talk about? Because I talk about the morning before I left, I'm sitting in this living room with you and Mel. Like, you saw that, and you guys saw the depths of it, and it's just like, I'm fucking scared. I don't want to go do this. I want to keep drinking, but I know I got to stop. But it was just this, I always write it like this, like, they sat and they listened. And that's it. And it was just nothing to gain from this. Nothing like, oh, it's about time you finally went. Even if you guys thought it, like, holy shit, dude, you're like 2 years late.
I'm going to be honest, I didn't think it because I, at the time, was also like, I mean, I had curtailed my drinking quite a bit, but I mean, and I still engage in an adult beverage occasionally, but like, we had fun, right? Like, so for me, like, there was a point in my life where I drank way too much, but I was able to just like stop, right? And that's not, I mean, not even necessarily stop, but just curtail it, right? Like, that's something that, you know, you're like on or off, right? Like, there's not a middle ground.
Right.
My dad, on or off, no middle ground, right? And that's, you know, that's completely understandable. People's brains are wired different, et cetera, et cetera. But like, when I was sitting here listening to you talk about that, like, I'll be honest, in my brain, I was just kind of like, oh, this seems like a lot. Like, this seems like doing a lot, but I don't have the same triggers, right? Like, I don't have the same, like, responses to alcohol. I don't have the inability to, like, curtail, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can just be like, oh, I've had enough. You know, I can stop. So, in the moment, all I could think of is, Jesus, David, rehab? Really? That seems like a lot. Like, you know, but as you continue to talk about it, I realized that you were in the same, like, emotional, mental state that I've seen other, like, alcoholics that needed that help have. And at that point, it was just about supporting another friend, right? And, you know, religion and stuff comes very rarely into play into decisions that I make now. You know,
Sure.
All I really think about is, you know, where you're at, like, how can I support you, you know? So, full disclosure, we have a text thread that we chat with each other literally every single day. You know, our other friend Brandon, I eventually will be doing this when we go visit him. Probably not now that I think about the context of that, but yeah, but we'll see. We'll talk with him. You know, we're talking about sobriety, and you've mentioned several times that you work, you know, I don't know, recovery, I guess. Like, you're in recovery, working in recovery, which is fun to say. How do you think your personal recovery informs, like, your process when you're engaging with people in recovery? And then a little bit, probably like a lead-in question to that, how many of the people that you work with are also in recovery? Like, is there a higher density of people that are in recovery where you work, or no?
Yeah, both. So the first, you know, I've actually been able to become sort of just a catalyst for success at this place, which is, it's hard to say because I think this is that religious aspect of me being like, well, we gotta be humble and whatever, but no, I've learned, you know, I'm a force of fucking nature, so I could put this out here. And
shit, I could have told you that
and
years ago.
I wish you would have.
I did.
You probably did. I was like, yeah, pass out. No, but I've realized, like, you know what? This is everything I've learned up to this point is, it's like it's the universe prepared me for this moment. And even in the religious stuff, because there's things I know how to do, like there's probably things you know how to do because you had to, like, work for a nonprofit church or a nonprofit organization. There's just things I know. So even when we go back, you think about ministry and, like, working for a church, working those things, you have to learn how to do stuff with nothing.
Yeah.
And then you have to learn how to create stuff, which is super easy for us, right? Because you just learned how to do things and make stuff yourself. But, the best part is, first thing that informs my job with my own recovery is I went to a really good treatment center. Like, I didn't realize how, whatever my thoughts of a rehab was, that was dispelled completely. I'm like, oh, this is not bad. This is not jail. This is like a place to actually come figure out what's going on biologically, psychologically, sociologically, and fix my brain. So that's a huge thing. I came into this center and was like, we need to stop doing this. We need to start doing this. We just recently as of this week, official start, we took away phones. We took away cell phones. I'm like, I'm sorry, man, but that's a huge part of recovery is just not having access to all this shit that we have. Like, I probably need a detox from my phone soon anyway. But the next phase of that is having a sensitivity to what it feels like. I know exactly what it feels like to be sitting in detox, like feeling like shit, looking like shit, and thinking, oh shit, I made the wrong decision. What am I doing here? I'm not that bad, am I? Like, all the thoughts. It's a roller coaster of emotions, plus you physically just feel like shit. Mm-hmm. So it is being able to meet them where they're at, and then it is just, I come in and my job is first and foremost to, so the title they gave me was Community Engagement Coordinator, which is really like, it started as go out and set up at fairs or at job fairs or at health events and talk about who we are, which I do. That's fine. But I told them, here's what I want to do. If I'm community engagement guy, then my community first is the employees. How am I cheerleading these employees? How am I making sure that they are taken care of and they feel like they want to come to work? Because if our culture sucks, if our community of our employees sucks, then that just comes off to the client. So then it's that culture, and then it's this culture of I don't know. I think it's fine. Yeah, it's that culture, and then it's the culture of the clients. Clients feeling supported, or do we have a way for them to express they're having a bad day? Are we having are they getting what they need, and are they being heard? Are they, just all around, and especially even now, we've created this. It's really like what has worked for me, and then, but when I get to sit, so one of my other jobs is literally, and that's the only reason I wanted to work at the recovery center was to do spiritual advisory, and that's what I presented to them as was I don't want to do. I'm not trying to lead people to Jesus or anything. It's not even about higher power. It's just there's something between the mental and the physical that you need to connect, and it's spirituality to me is going to be I do Tai Chi with these guys, specific 8 brocade system called Qigong. We do yoga. We talk about grounding and earthing and how you tap into the global electric circuit to really, find that energy that keeps us grounded, that keeps us connected with other people, because that's what we've done. We've shut off this circuit that keeps us grounded, that keeps us present, and we isolate. So my recovery is it's twofold. Like, I am recovering watching them, and so I'm able to be more patient because I understand why that yesterday they were on top of the mountain, and then today they feel like they're ready to walk out. And so it's just allowed me to be more patient. It's also allowed me to see through a lot of bullshit. Addicts and alcoholics are just full of shit. We've had to lie to keep this addiction going, so I'm able to read through it and be tough when I need to be tough and be light when I need to be light. I forgot the follow-up. So,
the other question was, like, in general, the people that you work with, like, are most of them in recovery as well?
So, like I'd say...
Go ahead and silence your phones, fans.
At least 50%. This is why we have a no phones policy. No, at least 50%, I would say, of the people that work there are... So I would say you can tell who's an addict or who has addicts in their life versus who's not. And you kind of do need both, but we have about... I have, one of my favorite coworkers, Alice, I think she's 6 years plus. Our case manager, who her and I have been tasked now with kind of overseeing stuff at the facility. She's got some sober time. I can't think. Maybe she's almost 4 years now. I think the cook has got 18 years. I mean, it was founded by addicts. So there's a lot of people that are also in recovery. And I think we're usually the ones making the changes and making the adjustments because we just know. how it's going to work and what they need after they leave our center. So I mean that's been good. And even now what I do with our alumni, when you graduate, you become alumni. You get a chip, you get a certificate. It's a whole thing. I'm working with 2 specifically, 3 I guess, that are helping me with these outreach events. And one guy just comes with me, and it's great to have him at the table because I'm here selling this thing. I'm like, well, don't listen to me. This guy went through our program. Like, let him tell you what it's like. So I think that's a huge empowerment to have those people in recovery. It changes because you know what you're talking about, basically.
So, you and I come from like a very similar like religious background. We grew up in the height of the 90s with the whole, you can only listen to Christian music. Secular music is evil. Secular TV is the devil. Like Bart Simpson's gonna ruin our culture. Like all that shit, right? But now, like, you're talking about the guys or the people. I shouldn't, be rude and just say guys, but bad habit. I call everyone dude. It's such a dumb thing. I was at work. We had this like school group, and this little girl, like 3rd grade or something like that. We're doing like the crank laundry thing, and she runs it through. I was like, "Hey, great job, dude." And she's all, "Why'd you call me dude?" I was all, What do you mean? She's all, "I'm a girl." I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm old. I call everybody dude,
bro."
Wild. So
that's funny.
So growing up in like this like, I mean, like I'm very willing to say it. Most people aren't, but like this very toxic and like isolating Christian culture of like the 90s and early 2000s. Hearing you talk about how as you're working with these people in recovery, like doing Qigong, Tai Chi, doing yoga, grounding yourself to the electric grid of the earth. Like this is the kind of thing that like wouldn't just get you mocked in a church, it would get you like ostracized from a church. So obviously you had to like come into contact with those like cultures and those ideas somewhere. How important do you think it is for people to like step outside of like their comfort zones to embrace new ideas, and why do you think it would be important?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of part of it's just growing up, right? It's like, why do I believe what I believe? Like, it's interesting. We kind of talked about this yesterday. That movie Heretic, it talks a lot about, it's presenting this idea of why do you think the way you think? And for the alcoholic, for the addict, a lot of what they think about themselves or about recovery, about what the future could look like, it's all because of what we've been told, right? It's even the things that we say about ourselves, like you're a fuck up, you're a piece of shit, all that shame, that guilt. Well, to me, it came to me through a spiritual advisor who says, whatever you've been taught up to now, or whatever you think is truth, how's that helped you? Where have you ended up with all of that? So just try it. And I think something that they teach you in Alcoholics Anonymous, or that you hear a lot of, is this gift of desperation. It's a gift of God, they'll say, to have this gift of desperation, to be so desperate, you say, I need to do whatever it takes. Like if you had cancer and they said you can recover from this cancer, but you have to do all these wacky things. If you want to live, you're going to do it. So I think I remember, again, this is how key Jen is in my recovery, because when I'm going to treatment, she says, whatever they do, just try it. I don't care if it's against your religion. I don't care if it's against, if you feel embarrassed to do it, like just do whatever they tell you. And so you do start trying these other things. And I think what it teaches you in the end, and I tell these guys, you can leave here and you can never do this stuff again. But you got to try to do something different than what you've been taught. And that's what it's been. It's just getting outside of my comfort zone and saying, well, I'm just going to do this. I'm here. I have this gift of being at a treatment center. I have the gift of rehab. What am I going to do with this gift? What am I going to do with this time? And so I think, and for me being so, I mean, you know, hit the nail on the head. I can't imagine my 35-year-old self even, and that doesn't feel too far from, you know, just a year and a decade. It does not feel too far, and I know for a fact if 35-year-old David knew what 46-year-old David was doing, it'd be like, oh my God, you've gone the way of, you know, whatever. Like, what are you talking about? Grounding, just pray. Like, what, you know, or you can't pray Buddhist prayers. How, like, what are you thinking? And so I've had, but the more, here's a concept I tell these guys all the time. A lot of it is letting go, and it's open hands. So I tell these guys, everything's open hands, right? It's like closed fists is like fighting. Open hands is everything. Like, what am I clenching? What am I holding on to? Is closed fists. Closed fists is resistant. If a cop were to come up to me with a point a gun at me, closed fist is we're
getting shot.
Probably getting shot, right? And so open hands is, you know, that's what the cop says, right? Hands up. Open hands is giving. Open hands is being able to receive. If you hug someone with closed fists, that's not a good thing. It's hugging. It's praise. It's receiving. It's gratitude. Open hands is, I don't know.
High fives?
High fives are, you know, yeah, you know, like.
Sorry, just came to mind.
No, that's good though, right?
Yeah.
It's open hands. It's like, but, and the biggest one though, I'm like, it's, I don't know. It's questions. It's like, I don't know why I'm doing fucking grounding. But I do know, like, Friday morning, went out and did yoga. I haven't had a chance to do yoga with the guys. We go every Friday morning with an instructor, and I'm finally like, I'm going. I need to do yoga. I'm having a long week. And I'm laying there in the grass. He did a 5-minute cool down, and he says, let's just lay in the grass. I didn't take a mat. I just took my shoes off and my socks off and just felt the earth. And I'm laying there on the ground, and he's like, we're just going to lay here for 5 minutes. Silence, your thoughts. And I'm just laying there, and all of a sudden it just starts sprinkling rain. And it's probably the most euphoric experience I've had in a long time. And the rest of the day was smooth, and everything else this weekend has just been like, I'm like, man, I need to lay in the grass. It wasn't the yoga necessarily so much, it was just laying in the grass for 5 minutes and letting rain kind of just hit. And you can call it whatever. Oh, God, whatever. Somebody said, God washed away, you know, all my shame today just laying in that thing. That's okay, cool. Some other lady was pissed because it's wiping off her makeup, you know. To me, I'm just getting this free moment with myself. And I wouldn't have been open to that experience if I hadn't just said, okay, fine, like, we're going to do Tai Chi. And I don't need to know how, I mean, that's the thing. It's letting go of whatever I was told about Buddhism or Tai Chi or yoga or saying namaste. Like, I don't care if it's inherently bad to my core religion or something. It's not, but that's what religion taught me, right? Organized religion in America taught me that this is how we do it. Anyone that does it differently, that's the devil. Everything's the devil. And then you clinch that, right? Closed hands, just clinching, this is what's right. And then as I've been able to open up, I'm like, oh, well, okay, this does work. I feel fine with it.
It feels like you talk about how you're a people pleaser, but you talk about that more in a past tense than you do in a current tense, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about choosing to do things for yourself significantly more in a current tense. Do you think that's like the do something different that you've really done?
Yeah, big time. I mean, I'm still working through this, right? But it's being able to say out loud, I'm a force of fucking nature. I add value to that place. I am a valuable asset. Like, I just couldn't bring myself to say that out loud. Because, of course, organized religions. Oh, we gotta stay humble. We gotta, don't be boastful. And I don't think it's boastful anymore. It's like, no, this is just who I am. And so, yeah, I think talk a lot about self-care. And I remember even self-care, just that term, in 2019, my ex-wife started talking about self-care. I need to do self-care. That was of the devil. Like, that's not how we roll. I know I would have said that to her. Like, it just made me uncomfortable. Like, you were being selfish. But there is something to that. That is me letting go of a lot of that old nature that, unfortunately, just it comes a lot from the organized religion.
So, another thing that I've like, just from personal observation, and like, it's not like I'm trying very intentionally with these to just draw from things that you say, but it's also very hard because we've known each other for like 25 years. So like,
That's crazy.
So, but I saw a lot of changes when you moved to the Valley, San Luis. Talk to me a little bit about how the nature and the environment and like the pace of that place has changed you, because it really has.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, so if you go down to the San Luis Valley, you ask a person who's born and raised there, a lot of them just talk poorly about it. Like, oh, I hate this place. Da da da. To me, I think one of the biggest things is, one of the gifts of divorce was my ex-wife moving us there. I mean, I thought it was punishment or something, but there is something about a small town like that has fought to stay small. There's the first job I had there was at a building supply, and it would remind me a lot of. It reminded me a lot of. Now I can't think of the place that was here for years, but just a small building supply, Hugh M. Woods.
Oh man, I haven't thought about that place in decades.
So it's like Hugh M. That's where I worked at. It's just a small. They had a lumber yard, but you could still drive to the back, and they could use a Home Depot there, but they're like, we're not going to use a Home Depot. That's going to hurt the owner of Alamos, the building supply, and we don't need these big places coming in. It's bad enough we have Walmart. I mean, that's kind of the language. There's something that reminds me really of my childhood. I mean, the Greeley that I grew up in was small, and you ride your bike everywhere, and you could just go to the park or just. It wasn't so big that you couldn't move, but it wasn't so small that you couldn't just go to Kmart and get certain goods. You didn't have to travel. If you really needed to go to the city, it wasn't that far. That part reminded me, but the blessing of that divorce, like I said earlier, is I didn't know anybody, and I really could, just for who I was, this identity that I was trying, this facade of being this perfect pastor, or of really not perfect, just like showing all my Bible college friends, like, look, I'm still doing it like you guys, and I just could go reset and then just be David, right? And because even in my depths of drunkenness, I was still. I mean, that's where my oldest son tells me, like, I still remember. I have this letter he wrote me when I was in treatment, and one of the things he just wrote was like, and he would always say, like, why do you help people you don't know? Like, you're always helping somebody, or you're doing a side job for old ladies, or shoveling their snow, or like, we're always doing something for other people. That's just in me. I love giving. I love serving. It empowers me in some way. And so there I was just able to do that. And I think really what it might have been too is there's just, the pace is slower. And then you're just closer. I can drive. I tell people all the time, I can drive 20, 30 minutes in any direction, and there's something to do. There's like something to enjoy that's outside. When you guys came down for the wedding, we got to take you to the secret garden, which is just, I love that. And it's not that it's it's highly Catholic, obviously, but it's not even that. It's this labor of love that this guy created for everyone to come enjoy, and there's just like that serene feeling of that place, and it's like, I guess I just got to find that there. Like, I think I just found serenity in that place. I just got to reset. I'll say this, and this will be kind of, because I just think about this. I was in a marriage where I wasn't allowed to have access to music. Like, it was in my earpods, but never, I couldn't just put on a record and let it play in the house. Which was devastating to me for years. And, I mean, I would do it, but it was always a level of contention. So it was there that I got to I moved out, got my own place, raised my kids on music, got to do things. It just was like a good, minus the alcohol, there was just a lot of good reset and just kind of like, you know what it was? I got it. That took me a while to get there. Yeah, I just found David again. And I'm like, I like David. What happened to David? Where did you go, And even though Drunk David was kind of leading the way, there was still a lot of me there.
Yeah.
And it was just like good to oh yeah, I just used to like doing this, right? I do like just hanging out with my kids, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's just where I met David and I just learned to tap into him and I got sober there. I mean, that's another huge thing. Like, it was if I hadn't have ended up in Alamosa with that group of people at that time, at that job, I don't know if we're sitting here.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
It's, my story, obviously. Like, maybe someday I'll do one of these with somebody else asking me questions. Probably not today. But, there's this notion of, like, self-rediscovery, right? Like, I felt pretty confident in who I was when I was in, like, my early 20s, and then I got married fairly young, had several kids, got a divorce, got into a second relationship, like, kind of was in the process of rediscovering who I was when that happened. And it took me a long time, and I think now I'm finally comfortable with, like, who I am, and, like, I'm able to, like, embrace my interests in a way that I wasn't able to, like, in my first marriage, because mostly for, like, weird, contentious religious reasons and stuff like that, the notion that if I see a boob, that's pornography, but also I love art, a lot of boobs in art, Also, incidentally, I did want to say the Secret Garden is probably one of the most incredible, like, pieces of, like, outsider art I've ever seen in my life. Mm-hmm. Like, this notion that, like, this person's labor of love, it has created, like, just such an incredible space. Like, and, like, honestly, I'll never tell anybody where it is. Like, I would never... I might show you, like, I might take a video and, like, walk around it, but I'm not going to be like, this is where to go to see this, because that place needs to never be crowded. But that's totally besides the point. But I kind of lost track of where I was going, as usual. But this idea of self-rediscovery, I think, is, like, super fundamental to kind of both of our stories. My choice to go back to school, to, like, really embrace, like, my love of art, and specifically, like, really fringy art, your desire to, like, literally as a profession help people, right, which seems to be, like, a really driving, motivating factor throughout your life, so it's really awesome to see. We've been going for a while, and I don't want to make these things super, super long, right? We've talked a ton about sobriety, we've talked a ton about kind of just your past. What's as we kind of are concluding, what's something else that, you would really like, that you've always really wanted people to just, like, know about you?
Yeah, I think I love new ideas, and I love when my friends discover new ideas. Like, I actually crave that. Like, the best thing somebody can do is send me a new song that they've heard, or a new band that they like, or a new book, or you have to see this movie. Lots of movies are harder because a lot of people are like, you have to see this movie, and I'm like that. There's this punk rock thing in me that's something like, no, I don't want to see it now because you want me to. But I think
people have observed it already, so it's not cool.
right. Like even like to me, like even, but it's knowledge. Like our clinical director, by the grace of God, we've really hit it off. We have the same kind of humor, but then sometimes she's like we're in a huddle in the mornings, just talking about different clients, and then she's like, she'll say like, "Oh, it's like this podcast I was listening to with Gabor Mate, talking about, I can't remember what it was, something to do with trauma," and it just like I'm looking around the room and nobody cares, and I'm like, so I ask her, I'm like, wait, what podcast, and which what interview, not to be a kiss ass, I just like,
you want to know,
like, yeah, I want to know what you know, like, because if someone's willing to go that far to say, oh man, I saw this documentary or I heard this certain podcast or whatever, like, it's like, I want to know what excites you so much, and even if it is like, some new religious thing that you have found that you think, whatever truth, it's just, it's not that I'm always going to agree with you or lean into that. Like even, I think you sent me something, this guy talking about, addiction and I think how he ends that is like, maybe it's not addiction at all. It's just like, this being around, like, I didn't agree with everything that he said, but a lot of it's so key and it just perks my interest. And I'm like, wow, so it's just, I'm always very inviting of people like, I think people that don't fully know me, and maybe some people still do, think I'm this way or something. And I'm just not. I'm very, to sort of wrap it, like I think about this even with my parents, even my wife, my second wife, because I'm going to try to get to 3 or 4. But
I always tell Mel that if my transition from first wife to second wife is this awesome, I can't wait for the third one.
I gotta drop that. No, but I think even my wife, the closer we've gotten, even before when we were just friends, she would just, there's this. Maybe this is the better answer. This could be simpler. I love it when people find out that whatever they've pegged me as, it's not there.
You're not that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like my parents, like even like my uncle was like, I guess he told my mom like, those are his 2 best friends, and she's like, yeah. He's like, I just don't see it. Like about you and Brandon. And
yeah.
I'm like, no man, we're every day we're texting, doing something. And I go, that's funny. And she goes, you've always been like that, though. You've just found the most weirdest things. Yeah, the weirdest things. And that's really what it is. It's, I think people sometimes think David's like this. He's some sort of fundamental guy, or he's into this. And I'm like, no, I'm interested. And if it excites me, I want more of it. That is a dopamine thing too, but these are healthy dopamines now. So yeah, I'm very open to a lot of. It's even more now. It's always been like that, but that concept of talking like expanding beyond this fundamental Christianity I was raised in, like to go beyond and just say, yeah, that's cool. Why do Buddhists do it like this, or why is Baha'i so grounded in this area? Like, that's cool. Like, tell me more.
My aunt's Baha'i.
Awesome.
My birth aunt. So like when I met her for the first time in my mid-30s, one of the most fascinating conversations I've ever
That's awesome.
had.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm gonna wrap it up so that we can all keep going with our days and just all that stuff. But
it's because he doesn't love us.
Oh my God, Cody.
Keep that in.
It will. So I had a school group come to the museum a few weeks ago, and they were homeschool kids. So like they're homeschool fundamentalist like kids, right? And I think the thing that was the most disturbing to me about it is every group of kids that has come in except for them, when I say the words, does anybody have any questions? Like 15 hands. And they're like, you know, why is your hair so curly? Do you know the Lava Chicken song? You know, like, or what's that thing over there? Or why is this building yellow? There's a million questions, right? When I asked the homeschool kids, like, does anybody have any questions? Nobody did, right? And I think there's this, like, fundamental flaw in, like, I don't think it's specifically Christianity. I think it's like any religion that focuses on, like, insulating itself from the outside world, is it creates, like, a curiosity vacuum, right? Where you've been told explicitly, like, this is what you think. So, like, when somebody presents you with the opportunity to ask questions, you don't have questions because you know. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's why you and I have pulled back from, like, religion in general. Like, me fully and you, like, largely. Don't take that as an insult. You know, and it just, we've always been very curious people. Like, you like me are constantly seeking out new movies, new music, new books, new this, new that. Like, Gabor Mate, go watch his shit.
Yes.
The guy's a fucking genius.
Yes.
But, like, this notion of, like, curiosity, I think, is, like, super, super important. And it really, I guess it makes me feel really good to hear somebody else say that, you know. Like, because we talk a lot. You know, I have all these notions about, like, ways to fix what's happening in our world right now.
Sure, yeah.
Because, like, our world is, like, literally, like, tearing itself apart. I think a big part of that is, like, this community aspect, like, these cultural, you know, communal moments. I went to a furry convention with my kid this last weekend, and, like, there was a couple that was just in the hotel. They just happened to be there. And so they were joking, and, you know, oh my gosh, these costumes are so crazy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I ended up sitting and having an hour-long conversation with this couple who lives in Houston. The wife is from the United States. Her husband is from Ghana. And we talked literally about furries, politics, religion, like assimilation, language, how it feels to be an immigrant, how I identify because he recognized me as white and I'm not, you know? Mm-hmm. So, like, in these moments, we can have these conversations that you're not supposed to have, right? They disagreed with me on tons of shit. Like, they were talking about how important English assimilation is. I don't fully believe that, but I don't really have a say because I had never had the opportunity to not assimilate to English, right?
Yeah.
You know, so, like, it's this, if we don't have these conversations and if we aren't curious about the people around us, like, things will not get better, right? It's just going to be us going, oh, fuck that guy, he's different than me, you know? So, I don't know. That's just my spiel, like, as we're wrapping up.
No, I love that. I think that I'll end on this. Like, it ties back, you know, and this is just this is my new gospel, but it ties back to that open hands thing, right? Like, I don't have to agree with you. I mean, open hands is also like, well, this is my boundary. Like, I don't believe that, but I'm willing to hear it. And I actually am very grateful. I just had this conversation on Saturday. A friend of mine asked me, like, what made you start questioning this stuff that we were raised in? And I said, you know, I'll never forget it. I know how I felt. I know where I was. I went to but you'd be familiar with all this. Like, I went to a Living Sacrifice show at the Upper Room, and they had just come out with that album, Reborn, and that was just a great fucking album.
Yeah, it's a heavy ass.
Yeah, I was like, whoa! Like, it was something like, even for us that had that, like, we have to listen to Christian music, it was like when you, to me anyways, I'm like, 90 Pound Wuss, like, that's just this gutter punk, like, that's ours. And so Living Sacrifice was that. But I went to their concert, and you know, I don't know what I really don't know what I would call it now. I just had this dopamine hit, but I would call it Holy Spirit back then. But I'm feeling something here, man. There's this energy. Everybody's here. It's just that thought of being in one place. It's going to the furry convention. We're all here for the same reason. We're with my tribe. Like, that's what it was now, right? Like, I guarantee if you walk through that convention center, there was probably this euphoric thing. Yeah. Cody's feeling like, he's feeling like, this is, like, here we are. So I know that that's what that was now, but I'm like, praise God, this is Holy Spirit moving, and to this music that I was told not to listen to or that's not good enough, and then I'm walking to my car in the parking lot, and I see the drummer by their van, and he's smoking a cigarette. And I, like, died.
I know, yeah.
What are you doing? Like, oh my God. And I remember when he was playing. And
why
such
are
a
you
weird,
smoking Satan sticks?
Exactly. Get that Satan stick out of your mouth. And it was just like, it that night, it destroyed me. But here was the deal. So everything we were taught, you compare with evidence. And so I started hanging out with more people, and I finally just asked, I just had to say, like, okay, I don't get it. Like, this guy, when he was on stage, something's happening. Because even he was singing with the lyrics, and how did I divide that? Something's not right. And then I finally just got to ask another person who was a Christian is smoking after the same spot in the same show. I saw it again. I'm like, how are these Christians smoking? I go up, I ask, and start talking with this guy, and he knows so much about, he's so grounded in his faith, and yet he has this religious freedom, and then it just, if I hadn't had that experience, I would have started asking questions, and just saying, well, why is it okay if you do that, and why, and that's where it is. I think that's, to ask questions, and be free to say, if I disagree with you, cool, thanks for the conversation. I think this is what makes my relationship with you and with Brandon so pure and so energizing, because, even if it's, unfortunately, I can't argue. What am I going to argue? Like, even if you guys were to make fun of something that's related to Christianity in some way, which is closer to where I would live with my theology, I guess.
I mean, obviously,
I'm not offended. It hasn't happened yet today. Today. But I mean, what am I going to do? Argue with it? Because I'm like, it's right there. Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. Like, I was going to say the same thing. But to me, it's like, I love that culture. That gives me hope for, even if it's just for my little section of the world, the hope that I can sit here and have these conversations. And I have probably family members that, yeah, they totally disagree with, how are you friends with, isn't that guy this, isn't that guy that, isn't his kid a furry or whatever, and like, that sucks. I hate that. It's gross, and that's where my boundaries are. I don't do that, because I love these people, because by the way, at the end of the day, unfortunately, I'm not saying I lost a bunch of Christian, I did lose a bunch of Christian friends. There's a lot of Christians I'm still friends with that are super supportive of where I'm at now, and that's by the grace of God that they, love. But then even so, you got me talking. But I'll just end on this. That I hate that part where I had a friend text me something. I had shared a story, and but God's not done with you yet. And I'm like,
brother, what?
When was he? Like, if the way I think about it is not. This is just the ongoing thing. This is all part of the journey.
I mean, I feel like if you believe in God, He's not ever.
Right. You should be like, yeah, it's just funny. But again, I kind of have to let those people feel the way they do.
Right.
And that's okay. God bless them. It is, though. It's good I don't think we can learn unless we're having those conversations. And we don't think we can learn to tolerate unless we're able to have conversations with people that we don't agree with necessarily, and then just walk away and say, okay. Because either it's going to challenge me and say, well, why do I still believe like this? Or it's going to just say, oh, okay, I probably need to, I don't have an answer to that, so maybe I should shut the fuck up.
Fair. Right on. Well, I feel like it would be wrong for me to not give you an opportunity to talk about to like plug where you work if you want to. Like,
of
you
course.
don't have to, but you've mentioned it several times, and if like somebody from the Valley happens to see this and
Sure.
needs that kind of help, it'd probably be good for them to just know that information.
Sure. So I work at Hope in the Valley. It's so this is part of what we're creating. This we say we create a climate of treatment and a culture of recovery. So I don't call it a rehab. I call it a treatment center. Rehab is where you go and sit and try to sober up for 30
Just
days.
fucking detox.
Yeah.
Wait, since when have you had this job?
Forever. Let him talk.
I've had this job since March of 2025.
Quick time out. This is about listening to David.
I started volunteering there because I wanted to give back something that I received from a treatment center. But we do amazing work. We do it all. We're the only residential treatment center in the Valley. That means we have a clinical management detox, but we clinically manage you there. It's not like you come in and just, we hope you don't die while you're detoxing. Like, we're going to do med management, safe management withdrawal. And then we have everything. We have preventative measures for our community. We offer support to the addict and to the family members of addicts. We have a great aftercare program. It's all there for success. We want those numbers. So the average person that leaves the treatment center, I think it's a little bit higher now, but it's between 15 and 18% of addicts will stay sober beyond 30 days after treatment. Like, that sucks. So our rate is a little bit higher, and that's because of the way we approach it. And, our thing is, that hope in the valley. Yes, it's in the San Luis Valley, but there's also just this concept of being in this valley of life where you feel like you're at the bottom. Like, there is hope there. And I love what we're doing because it's right now, it's only been open a year, and it's so grassroots, and we just get to try these things and just help these guys recover. And that's like dream job, to be able to take what I have and use it. And even the spirituality part, to be as free as I want and be able to introduce spiritual concepts from other cultures and religions, and just to help people heal. So I love that. So yeah, you're right. If it goes out to anyone, I always say my number is 719-580-8811, and call me. Like, I don't care what you need. We'll get you to a meeting. We have recovery meetings. We have everything that, to dip your toes into the water, or if you're sober curious. It's just whatever we can help out.
Sober curious. I like that.
That's the new one, man. I heard it once and I'm like, okay, we're going to start using that. Sober curious. Yeah. But typically, if you're asking, like, am I an alcoholic? You probably are.
So, first of all, Cody, I barked at you. I shouldn't have. I'm a control freak. I have a problem. But just to reiterate, so these conversations are about me being in community with people, right? So, God, I'm always an emotional wreck. I don't know what my problem is. So if I cry, that's just me being a bitch. It happens. It literally happens to me all the time. Like, yesterday at the furry convention, they were talking about how they raised like $26,000 for this like no-kill kitten shelter, and I start crying.
Seriously?
Oh, wow.
Yes, seriously. Get off my back.
That's cool.
But I mean, totally besides the point. So, these conversations are about being in community with somebody. So, obviously, like, if you're watching this, you've heard me talk about how long I've known David, but I want to have these conversations with you. I don't really care who you are, what you do, what you're interested in, as long as it's, like, just interesting. Like, don't come at me with, like, I like to, draw circles on pieces of paper for no reason. I want to hear about things that you're doing, things that you're interested in, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, please, I don't expect any kind of inundation from anything, but, like, don't inundate me with dumb.
Like, feet.
Or feet. Man, we got through
Sorry.
this whole interview
I know.
with nary a mention of feet or pantyhose.
That'll be the unreleased.
So, with that said, like, this has been David Herrera talking about himself. It's been a pleasure to listen to you. Like, it's been a pleasure to ask questions. Like,
I love hanging out.
like, I love doing this kind of stuff. You know that I've loved doing this stuff for a really long time. So
Glad you're doing it.
yeah, me
Big
too.
time.
Just excited to do more creative things with this kind of stuff because I find it fascinating. So,
Awesome.
but yeah, I guess the easiest way to conclude this, David, is if I hated you, you'd know.
I love that.